Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Ball Watching. Third episode? Yeah, third episode of the season for us. Justin, I already feel like we've been in it just because we did that first episode and we weren't scraping the bottom of the barrel for some content, but we definitely had to work a little bit more than we're used to fuel the show. And these last couple of weeks have been news after news after news and a lot of positive stuff, right? When you think about player signings that we're going to talk about a lot of today. But we've also been fortunate enough to run into some amazing listeners and, adjacent folks around us. Justin, you got a couple on here. Let's shout them out.
Yeah, Jake, it was actually a big week for that. I was pretty surprised. But shout out Joseph. I saw him, went on Sunday night, a little birthday dinner, sushi AI, all you can eat. The one in Clayton, very nice. And I absolutely pounded that sushi. So I'm glad I saw him before, not after, because I needed a wheelchair to get out of there. And then Steve Duncan this morning at the gym. He's the father-in-law of Katie Shields, the head coach of the SLU women's soccer team. So he is always wearing Bills gear, hoodie, hat at the gym. And I was like, all right, I got to say something to this guy. Like, who are you? And then we started talking. Great guy. Wanted to give him a quick shout out. And then also quick shout out to the Hoffman bros, Brandon and Riley, two guys that are actually in the plumbing department there. But I'm always seeing them in the morning. They're always in the locker room as I getting ready to leave for work as I'm coming in just before 6. So these guys are literally nonstop, but it makes sense, Jake, because this weather is coming this weekend is going to be just Arctic cold hitting St. Louis. And both you and I are going north. And what did you see what Cooch said? It's going to be like a wind chill of like minus 35 up in Wisconsin while we're there.
It's going to be brutal. It is, Justin, just to wrap it back around to this, it is the very reason why I think this like weekend will probably be the time in the new world when the schedule change happens where I think we will restart just after this weekend with the whole like month pause right around the holidays in January. This is why. Because you get crap like this that's going to sweep the entire country in shapes or forms. But, dude, yeah, the North looks brutal. I think we as St. Louis might get a little bit more on the fortunate side, but it's going to be cold.
Yeah, and if anybody hasn't been monitoring this, take it a look. I've seen anything like St. Louis getting like nothing to maybe 3 inches of snow, but then Oklahoma City is supposed to get like 15 inches. Nashville's getting 15 inches. Those people don't even know how to drive in the rain, much less 15 inches of snow. So it is going to be hell across the Midwest this weekend. And we're going north. It's going to be twice as cold, but it's going to be dry. So I'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, shout out to our friends at Hoffman Brothers. They're keeping you warm in these crazy cold winter nights that are upon us. Winter has come, finally. We got a little bit of a brief pause on it after that early snowstorm, but it's here. It's here, folks. And guess what else is here, Justin? It is our newest segment on the show, Retweet or Delete. And I've got it today, Justin. I've got it for us. And for anyone that's just now tuning in for this season or just now meeting us or seeing us, this is a segment where we transition every week. Jake's on, Justin's on, Jake's on, Justin's on, and so on. And we give, something kind of spicy, something that goes a little bit on the Scoville level here. And the other person's got to either field that and retweet it or delete it and share some sort of counter. So mine this week, Justin, I feel really confident I might get a couple RTs from you and from some of our listeners out here. But I think, and we're going to get into this link, but the news that came in from Tom Bogert about Mbacke Fall, so not Fallu Fall, who's currently here at City, but Mbacke Fall, who we are now linked with, supposedly in the final details of the deal on. This, Justin, he's a center back. You'd pair two Falls, and trust me, the jokes and stuff, we'll get all the details. But I think this center back duo is probably, if we can get this over the line, the most exciting center back tandem in Major League Soccer. And I think for us, this is an immediate elevation of the club to, for your casual fans or your pundits, your analysts, this is St. Louis going to must-watch status because you have two courageous, youthful, just fierce defenders that are out there trying to make a living off of this and go somewhere big with their game. And they're doing it here under the lights at Energizer Park. These are two defenders that, Justin, I feel like you look around the world and the biggest and best defenders, in my opinion, at least of like the recent modern era, are guys not only that are great defenders, but great ball players, right? Like they can pass like no one else, like a midfielder can. They have good vision. Obviously, they're tough. They're athletic. They can make recovery runs. These are your Rolls Royces. And I'm not saying these guys are Rolls Royces yet, but they are going to be exciting to watch because they've all the tools inherently to get there. And if we can become the place where they get there, my word, could we be in a world of fun in the back line. So I'm excited for the Great Wall of Fall. I think we have the most exciting tandem in Major League Soccer.
So, Jake, I'm going to pause right there and just let you know that you should be very happy that we're not in the old Twitter world days, because you would have hit the character limit about a minute and a half ago. But I will absolutely retweet. I'll quote tweet it as well, because, yes, I completely agree. Very exciting. Now, I want to do a quick devil's advocate to that, because for any of the highlights you've seen, obviously, Valuations Fall, great highlights this year for us, but also some very low lights. And when you put that pairing together, both of these guys, very young, both under the age of 23, 24, very athletic, very good on the ball, but also gives them a confidence then to where you saw I think it was the one bad back pass from Fall trying to go to Mbacke. You could see that a lot more often this season. So it is going to be one to be a little bit more cautious about, but it's just exciting nonetheless. This is like old school ball. Like when I was a center back, Jake, these guys are going up for every corner kick. They are getting up in the air, winning those headers as well, and then they're going to be busting their butts to get back. But I think they're going to be great on the ball. And if you see these highlights from these guys, they can absolutely ping it as well. They can get guys in behind. They can send Celio in. They can send in Hartel in. Then go Sang Bin opposite side in behind as well. So that's what's going to make them exciting. So, yeah, I'll go with a retweet on that.
Let's just go straight into it, Justin, because we have more to talk about with Mbacke Fall already. But, yeah, so the news came in on this that he is a 23-year-old Senegalese center back. 6'2", from what I was able to collect there. And Tom Bogert came out a couple days ago and said that we were finalizing details with his current club, which is Barcelona, but not the Barcelona that you're thinking of. You know, it is on the books at Barcelona, but he plays for their Barcelona Athletic team, which is their second team. They're their B team, essentially. And that team right now, at this current moment, is playing in the 4th tier in Spain. So that it rings some bells. But I want to give you the story because the story is important. Had an incredible beginning to his career, actually here in Major League Soccer, where he logged 35 appearances in just under 3,000 minutes across 2 seasons at LAFC at the age of 18 and 19. Also collected a 2022 MLS Cup. He wasn't like the guy on LAFC's back line, but he was a guy that could come in, do a job, nick a goal or two, and then he got his move. You know, he was actually playing at LAFC and doing loans back and forth between Barcelona and Villarreal, mostly featuring for their second teams. But still, that was his goal, was to get overseas, and he eventually was acquired by Barcelona Athletic for $2.3 million, American dollars. It's there, Justin, and I feel like not the wheels come off, because you can't come off when you're so young, right? Like, he wanted to make that move. He got the move. Was it the right move? Maybe was it too early? I think is maybe where the narrative sort of shifted. But when you look at this profile, Justin, I mean, it's hard not to be, stargazing at like what could be, but you're also buying what is right now. You're not buying what could be. So what do you think about, Justin, from what you've read and seen so far from Mbacke Fall?
I think, Jake, to your point, it's a step forward in a style of play that you're looking to play, because this is a complete opposite type of player than a King Kess, a guy that or like a Tim Parker, a guy that is really like a rock on that back line. This, you already knew what you were getting into with Valuations Fall, and you're literally fall squaring. You're putting this twice into the back line with these guys, because look at these stats. I know this is back in 2022 for LAFC. For anybody that can't see this visually, on the attacking stats, and this is comparing to center backs who had over 1,200 minutes in the MLS in 2022, he is ranking in the probably, what is that, on average, 93rd percentile in attacking stats. That's non-penalty goals, non-penalty XG, assists, expected assists, and things of that nature, shot creation action. So this is a guy that likes to get forward. My question is, how is his defending? Everything that I've seen from a highlight perspective, all the way back to LAFC and through the times that he's been with the Barcelona second team, is that he is a guy that goes to ground, which can be great, but also very dangerous. I see a lot of slide tackles, a lot of which ends plays, but it could be, once you get some of these guys, they can do a little nick over the top of you, jump over you, and they're in, or you could be fouling the guy in the last one, and then you do a red card. So it's a dangerous style to play, but he's very young. And to your point, Jake, he has so much to learn, so much to grow. He's literally just like a little younger brother of Valuations Fall.
Yeah. I mean, legitimately, he's actually, I think, just marginally older than Valuations Fall, which is crazy to think about. And my one of the biggest perks I think of this deal, Justin, is that LAFC sold high on Mbacke, we're buying low. It's not like he's, totally fallen off the deep end in Spain, but he needs something to sort of reset because he does want to go back to Europe. That was reported on in Tom's scoop. But his contract's expiring in June. So whatever fee we're paying can't be much considering the form, considering the time left on the deal. So we're not going to be bent over on this deal. Won't be a DP deal, won't be a U22 deal. I don't even think you'll have to use much, if any, TAM money on this guy. I think this is what we talked about, Justin. This is a guy that goes overseas, gets what he thought he wanted. It wasn't what he wanted. It's not working out for him. Can I come back here to something that I know, something I'm familiar with, a league that I've, succeeded in from time to time at a younger age, and use this as a place to refine that part of myself, and use this then as a jumping ground to actually make the move I should have made and just taken a little more time on?
Well, that's exactly it, Jake. It's like I want everybody to take a step back and remember that, yeah, he may want to go back to Europe, but the guy is only 23 years old. Yeah. So, like, this is a guy that when you think about for anybody else that's coming, that's probably the age of our guys that we just drafted. So it's definitely a buy young or buy low and possibly sell high. When we talked about it, you already said that Barcelona grabbed him for $2.8 million, and that was his highest market value back in 2022. That's now down to $300,000, but that's what's his current market value. And that's what happens, though, when you get stuck in these lower tiers. He comes over here. He can get meaningful minutes. He can get a spotlight on nationally televised game, world televised games, and then he can go back over there. And for us, it's a buy low, train, grow, sell high, or buy low, doesn't work out, move on with it. So I think it's a great pickup for us.
Yeah, and what are you guys going to see? Like, what am I going to see in Energizer Park sitting in my seat? We all know what Valu Fall's about, and not to be like too simple about it. To me, just from what I've seen and read, it kind of feels like Valu Fall, but on the right. And he's a right-footed guy. Falu's left-footed guy. So these two are going to pair so well together. The Fall name is just absolutely crazy. They share this. Obviously, both Senegalese. He is a good aerial threat, both in defense and in attack. He's an aggressive defender. You mentioned, Justin. He likes to get down. He likes to get dirty. He likes to slide. He likes to engage the receiver of the ball, get up in their grill, make it really difficult to turn. And I like that. He's also a line-splitting passer. He looks for those diagonals, those big moonrakers across the pitch. He looks for the incisive pass into midfielder up to his attacker. And I also think, Justin, you alluded to this as well. You got to know what you're getting here. This is not the finished product. The product is supposed to be hopefully finished or at least close to it here in St. Louis. That's going to take time. I think with Valu, we're understanding that there's going to be a level of patience we're giving to these guys. They're young. Valu has got it, by the way, he is turning 22 in April. So Valu is still 21 only, and this guy's 23, and he will be 23 for this whole season. We have a 23 and a 22-year-old center back, so I think we trust the most at this point in terms of we're going to put a lot of minutes in their legs and see what they can do and stand up to, but mistakes are going to come. It's going to be part of the game. That's how these guys live and learn, is by making these mistakes. And you know what? It might result in goals sometimes, but I would guarantee you, I would at least put my hand up, Justin. I'd rather see goals in a game. I know that we'll also see a lot of pre-assists and a lot of setup attacks that come from these guys' feet as well, which I'm all about, having defenders that can play forward as well and not just be, just only defenders. That's where the game is going. That's what excites me. They're going to put butts in seats.
Oh, absolutely. That's what's going to be exciting about the team, Jake. Sorry, I was trying to also pull this up because what you mentioned, and it kind of threw me off, was Senegal. I got to mention it. For anybody that didn't see the AFCON final on Sunday night, absolute cinema. If you can't see my screen, go out and look at our reel. Go look at our TikTok. We have a TikTok now, Jake. Oh, that's kind of exciting. But there was a VAR decision, a goal called back for Senegal in the 90th +2. And then you get a PK given to Morocco in the 90th +7. Senegal goes, no, you just called our goal back. And now you're going to give them a free goal. Their coach calls them all off the field. Sadio Mane calls them back onto the field. And Morocco misses the PK, goes to extra time, and an absolute banger by Senegal to win the game. There was a bunch of antics from Morocco guys stealing the towel of Mendy, the goalkeeper for Senegal. So if anybody hasn't looked at it, go check our reel out. Go look it on our TikTok, our YouTube shorts, or just go out and just look up the full highlights of the match because it was absurd.
No, it was. And both these guys, would dream about playing for Senegal, who are now the reigning AFCON winners, which is crazy. By whatever you want to say, they're the AFCON winners. And US is actually playing a friendly against them as well prior to the World Cup. So we've got them on our schedule, which is going to be a fantastic friendly, even more so now, given they just won that silverware. So congrats to them. These two would be, dreaming of that opportunity to play for Senegal. And neither of them have gotten the call up. Falu's gotten a U23 call up, and I believe Mbacke has gotten a couple other U setup call ups, but neither have been in the mix so far because this is a really good nation when it comes to soccer. So we started with like the least firm, right, Justin, in terms of the deals for this team. Let's go up a ladder and let's talk about Conrad Wallem, who was made official this morning at 6 a.m. local here in St. Louis, which was bizarre. Maybe because he's a number 6 or something like that. I don't know why else you would do it. But Conrad Wallem is coming back permanently. And by permanently, I mean for 3.5 years. He will be here through June 30th of 2029 after he gets his visa and all that stuff set up. But a 3.5-year contract. The man was on loan last year. And Justin, we'll get into some of the stats you pulled here about his impact on this team last year, because I think a lot of people overlook it considering how the year went. He kind of gets washed away a little bit in some of the mix of all the bad memories from last year. But I do want to say 2 things before we talk about those stats. Permanent transfer. We did have an option to trigger a permanent option on his loan. We did not do that. That was going to be for a lot more money. So I'm glad that we made this decision. He probably would have been a DP had we triggered that option. We took our time, played a little more hardball, took it smart, got him here. And I think Corey Ray is pretty ecstatic about it because he said in verbatim, Conrad has already proven that he is a fit for this club, both on and off the field. His tactical intelligence, experience, and versatility will allow him to contribute immediately. And the permanent move should help him settle and build on strong performances he showed with the group last season. Justin, he did in this quote, I want to put this in your head before we go back to Wallem. He did say that he's excited to further strengthen the squad ahead of the season. When you hear that or read that, what does that tell you?
I think it could be 2 things, Jake. Because my initial reaction to that, honestly, is that he's excited to have him back and strengthening the squad. However, I don't think that we're done yet, right? I wouldn't expect us to be. It is getting closer and closer to the season, but like we talked about earlier, just because it's getting closer doesn't mean that you have to have these guys plugged and played, ready to play for the first game on February 21st. So right. Pump the brakes. Like I would rather us take the time, sign a DP or another key role player in this game or in this team, and then get them accustomed to the team, get them in the chemistry, and get them caught up to speed, and then get them true meaningful minutes a couple games in the season. Completely fine. I would love to see that happen. So that's my initial reaction is, yeah, he might be toying with it a little bit, but I think it's a nice play on words to where, like, if he's not going to sign somebody, he's like, oh yeah, I was talking about Conrad the whole time.
No, he very well could be. Corey Ray could just be a wordsmith that we had no idea we were getting into bed with. But I agree with the take, Justin. I don't think he's coming out and saying, hey, there's more coming, don't you worry. But I think he leaves a little bit there in the gray just to be desired and hopefully keep us all hanging on for more. But Justin, I want you to break down some of these stats here because, again, I want to go back to he was a really fun player. I mentioned, I think maybe in the last episode or 2 episodes ago, we were speculating about his return, that for me, he's one of the most technically gifted players we have on this roster now that he's permanently back. And he filled so many voids last year. And that can be a positive and a negative, right? We were just bogged down by injuries for most of the season, which caused a lot of that to happen for him. I also think it kind of maybe caused some stalling in certain areas because he's good at a lot of things, but can he become really good or elite at one thing? Because I want to put it out there, I don't want him playing midfield unless like we're in a really big crisis or maybe doing some rotation or trying some new things out. I want him to become the guy at one thing. And I think that one thing is either going to be a left back or a left wing back for us this season. That to me is where he's going.
No, I think that's most likely where he's going. Obviously with everything that's been a rotating door ever since Johnny Nelson. But Jake, to your point, he hasn't really had like a true spot on the pitch, on the field. I like to say the pitch because shout out to the pitch, Caddy Corner 2. City Park, and we'll be there just over a month from today for the first ever game and been going there for Blues games, the U.S. figure skating stuff. The pitch is an incredible place to be. If you haven't been down there recently, get down there. They had it all decked out for the U.S. figure skating, and that's a great place to watch some Billiken basketball, which are currently on right now, up 10, up 12 on Duquesne. Shout out number 24, Bills. But Jake, the reason that I brought this up for Conrad Wallem was even though he did not have a spot on the team, he still did an incredible job and was second in some of the most key categories that you can from a non-goal scoring perspective. He was second in minutes, assists, total passes completed, total key passes, and crosses. You know who's first in all those categories? Mr. Hartel.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. But he was technically the second in all of those. And he actually led the team in 2 categories. One's a good one, one is not, but it's fun regardless. He was first in fouls suffered on the team, but he was also first in fouls committed. So it's just telling you that this guy's a workhorse and he's going to stat stuff regardless if you're going to be having in a constant position or not. And I think it makes it all the more impressive considering he was a utility guy. We played him at 6. We played him at right back sometimes, left back. He moved up the field as well. You could see in the stats that we already have compared to fullbacks last season, he was in the 88th percentile for shot creating actions. And he was also 78th percentile in a non-penalty XG. So as a wingback, this guy is getting up the field and he's extremely dangerous.
Yeah, he is. And I don't know if you mentioned this, Justin, or if you've seen this, because I've clocked it. I always kind of save a little space in my mind when I look at players for like the mentality. And he's got a little scrap in him. You know what I mean? Like a little glint in his eye, where if you get under his skin or if you leave a little bit extra in that tackle, he'll remember that. He's got the receipts in his head. He's obviously known to make some harsh challenges, and he's gotten some yellows for sure as well. But that's why he first in fouls committed, obviously, like you said. But that aside, I like a guy that is not afraid to stand up for himself, stand up for his teammates, and get in scraps. And he's not the biggest dude either. It's not like it's expected of Conrad Wallem, but he does it. And I think anytime you can add a player like that has the technique, has the athleticism, and has that mentality, it's a marriage or of a great trio of things I think make for a really good quality player. And I think we've got ourselves a really good, shrewd piece of business here.
I think it's an awesome pickup for us. I think people were worried about the price tag, but now it's not just like a short-term buy. We're signing this guy through June of 2029, and he's ours to work around. And I think that's one of those guys that I think he's a good locker room guy as well. You never see him being the ones that's kind of just like throwing his arms up in the air, frustrated with his teammates. I think he's just a hard worker, and it shows in what he does on the field as well. So I think it's a great guy to have long-term for this team because guess what, Jake? It's not a short season, and the boys are already in preseason, as we already mentioned. They already reported back over a week ago now, and they had training in St. Louis. They're probably pumped. Now they're down at IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida. And their first match is against the New York Red Bulls this Saturday, January 24th. But I want to remind everybody, that's not streamed. At best, you'll get some like halftime updates. And when I say halftime updates, you will see a full 11 switch. It will literally be 2 11s, and you got to take everything with a grain of salt because I bet you that first 11 is going to be a mix of guys that like Josh Yarrow could even start in the first 11. Like it will literally truly be a way for Johan May to see how he wants to play with each of these guys.
We talked about it last week too. Preseason everyone always wants to talk about preseason, and it's really not important unless it goes really poorly or really well. If it's somewhere in the middle, it's very forgettable. For us, I think it was probably somewhere in the middle last year. The most memorable thing, Justin, for me last year in preseason, and I'm just hoping to God we don't see this year, is our coach in flip-flops. Just walking around, mulling around the sideline. Olaf, I don't think he got the team shoes. Maybe they were lost in the shipment or in transit. But that was our first impression of Olaf Melberg. And frankly, Justin, maybe that was a little bit of writing on the wall. So only up from here if you're DeMay.
Yeah, there's a fine line, right, where you're like trying to be swaggy, but also you got to look like you give a shit. And
that wasn't swag.
Yeah, it's like you got Mike McDaniels down in Miami for the Dolphins. Like at some point, man, you got to stop focusing on your curls and like your jogger pants and focus on winning games because guess what? Now you're out as a head coach. Same thing with Olaf. Yeah. So making a little cross-sport connection there. All football, all the same. But Jake, to your point, I just want everybody before we get into it. If we lose a game 4-0, pump the brakes. It's literally, I would say the most important thing here, same with Pochettino, talking about when he was talking about the friendlies that we had earlier this fall or this summer when people were freaking out about it. It's like the man's playing chess, not checkers. You're trying to figure out what you want in the long term and the best thing for this team going forward. And that's what DeMay is going to be using training camp for. Yeah,
absolutely. And final thing, Justin, here before we go into kind of our reactions to Carolyn Kindle's most recent the City Voice podcast, where she gave a lot of good tidbits from her perspective of this year and last year, was we got news on Edelman. News I was not expecting, Justin, because we had him on contract through this season and the next with an option for 2028. But we signed Daniel Edelman to an extension without even playing for us yet. He is signed to a contract now through June 2029 with a club option for the 29-30 season. So now that puts him guaranteed, basically right on par with Wallem in terms of, duration. But both those guys, playing their cards right, could stretch into 2030, which is crazy that we're talking about the year 2030. I know it's 2026 now, but just for us, yeah, players don't always say through the whole length of their contract, and they want to get renegotiations and all that fun stuff. But the idea of us having first team minutes and players signed on this team potentially into the new decade is mind blowing. But I think from a more grounded perspective, it shows faith from the club and faith in the recruitment profile, faith in the age we're looking for, that we want to build guys. We're not buying the finished product. We're not finding or locating or going for guys that are going to, just put us over the edge at this point. We have a lot of ground to cover, a lot of work to do, which we're going to talk about here with Carolyn Kindle, about the quotes that she shared in this episode. But I think Edelman's contract extension, combined with Wallem's new contract with the permanent transfer, I think it is Corey Wray kind of drawing a line in the sand and saying, we're going to give these guys a shake and we're going to build with them. They're a part of our plan for the next at least 3 or 4 years. And we're going to show them that faith in these negotiations.
Yeah. And it's this might be a fun fact, Jake, and I'm trying to kind of just realizing this now, but it all makes sense, is with the change in the MLS schedule. That's why these are like our first guys that we're signing into that new window, which is June. Typically, we see a lot. The only time we see guys coming over in June would be like a Thor. His contract was up in the middle of June because that's how the rest of the world does their windows, and that's when they would be on the off time. A lot of our guys are currently signed through like December because that's when we are currently ending our seasons. But now we're seeing that turnover in this, and it's awesome to see. Just one on that piece that I'm so excited for us to be moving into that. But then also as well to be signing these guys for 3 years. This is like the new chapter of City. There's a lot of changes that have been going on, and I don't want to see these guys sign like a 1-year option. I want to start seeing guys that we're building and are going to be with us for the long term, and it's cool to start to see some of those signings come to fruition.
And Justin, final note I'll make on the durations too is these are not guys that when they're done with that contract, this is it, right? Like they're probably looking for at least one more good contract after this. So you're hoping that if all things go well, that either you want to tie them back down and they can finish their career here, or they haven't deteriorated all their value because they're too old now. In terms of like the primal age of your positions, these are two guys that still have some life at the end of the tunnel post this contract, even if they serve it all here. So it's a good business move, I think, as well. And Justin, to your point on the schedule, that is going to be so difficult. I don't envy the MLS right now in terms of how they're going to have to untangle and work with all these contracts, because yes, these contracts are now set for the June, but all those ones that are grandfathered in, how do you work with those players? So like for everyone that has their contracts mostly ending in December, typically with this schedule change, that's halfway through the season. You're going to tell me that we're not going to change or like work with the CBA or the Players Association to renegotiate these contracts and either skim them back 6 months or add another 6 months on to align to the new timeline. It's going to be a lot of work behind the scenes. And it sort of hit me recently. Obviously for our club, that'll be some work, but for all these clubs with these players that have already been here, it's going to create a lot of administrative burden to fix this. But I still support the move. I'm pro, fall spring schedule.
Yeah, it's something that we needed to do. And it's going to be a tough change because to your point, like as the CBA, you'd expect people to want to just extend that 6 months because it's your job, right? However, some of these guys are probably like, no, I'm going to bet on myself, cut that shit backwards. And I want to get out the season before. However, if you're the club, you're like, no, I technically own you for halfway through it. So at a minimum, we're keeping you there. So I would say the majority of those guys, I would think that you're going to be seeing a little push out. But there are definitely going to be some, I would say, fireballs that they're going to be having to deal with across the MLS. And I'm glad that we're not being the ones that are going to have to do that. And we still have some time to get there, right? But I would say this time next year, oh, yeah. It is going to be an absolute mess.
So let's talk about it, Justin. We teased. We also did our own stuff around this year being City's new dawn. City released a nicely put together, almost cinematic video across social media a couple weeks ago in the new year. We did ours in the form of a Star Wars crawl. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out at BallWatchingSTL on Instagram and X, and now TikTok as well, and all the socials, whatever. But Carolyn Kindle also now has gone on record on the City Voice podcast, which is, by the way, incredible. Really the only place you can get to see coaches, staff, players do regular interviews. Is on the City Voice podcast, and it's done by Pete Wood at the club. Does an exceptional job. I encourage you all to go check out that whole series of podcasts. But Carolyn Kindle was the most recent guest, and it was about a 40 or so minute podcast, and also video on YouTube as well. It's very nicely shot. And I just picked a couple of things, Justin, here, because whenever you have an owner on the seat, you could call it a little bit of a hot seat right now with what's transpired this last season. It's always curious to kind of peel back the curtain and hear what they have to say, because a lot of what I feel like we hear is, through press releases and, big sponsor events and big like jersey reveals and stuff like that. We don't really get to hear them asked questions in more of like an overarching sense that isn't like pointed at one specific thing. And so, Pete really opened it up well with, 2025, what was that experience like? How did you perceive it? How did you get through it? And I pulled a quote from here, that I've experienced emotions, not good ones, that I've never felt before, and I will never feel that way again. So clearly, from hearing her say just this one quote, and again, I encourage you all to check this whole thing out, is that 2025, probably one of the harder years of her tenure, especially as an owner and involved here at the club, emotional, obviously kind of going through a little bit of an organizational reset of some sort, and resetting standards as well that we have and that shape us as a club. But it's good in a roundabout sort of weird way, but to hear her, and I know words are all just words, right? And you'll see actions hopefully here soon, but to hear someone at that level of club leadership kind of empathize and feel the same sort of emotions and the roller coaster that we all felt last season, it was good to kind of feel a little bit of solidarity in what we've been through and seen, and to have her also wear those emotions on her sleeve on camera and in a recorded format. I appreciated it. And I'm, if I was her, I would probably say the same thing.
Yeah, and it's tough because how often do you see owners get on podcasts? And maybe that's just something that I just don't see as commonly. But I think it's important for her to be able to be speaking to this, because the last thing you want to be do is hiding and be like, yeah, we're working on it, and then not be able to come out and say this. And like, yeah, it could be scripted, whatever. I don't care. I think it's very impressive for her to be able to sit down with this and for them to put this out, put it on socials, put it on reels. It's not just that like, oh, we're going to go drop it on YouTube. If you check it out, cool. If not, we don't care. I think it was very impressive by the club and a great move by them. And I think another important point that she made, Jake, was a message to us and everybody else as fans and media, is that patience with purpose. Rome wasn't built in a day. We have to build back slowly so that we build back correctly. That was a quote from her. And I think that is an extremely powerful quote because, yes, we were all super excited. We won the West in the first season, and then we absolutely just nosedive. And that winning the West in the first season, we'll say it every year over and over, worst thing could have happened in this club, right? You're setting the expectation that we're just going to bulldoze the MLS. Now we need to reset those expectations and build slowly, because if you try to rush back into that, that's when you just crumble again. It's like she said, building Rome. I'm going to say building a road. If you try to just throw pieces out there and we're just going to say, oh yeah, build this right now, it's like building on quicksand. You need to build that foundation and then move down the line. And I think right now we're resetting that foundation. And it's going to be a long-term plan that she's going to be focusing on.
And couldn't have said it better. The building back slowly is the key word there. Like, all right, I'm here. I am going on record and I'm saying all this stuff, but bear with me. This is going to take time, which I think then alludes to, Pete asked her some questions about the 5-year vision, and you and I have asked questions, right, on the podcast, and, to friends and family and to fellow listeners and fans. Like, we always hear the 5-year vision, and, Roman Mbacke signs his DP deal and he was impressed by what the vision is. And everyone that comes here says, the fans and the vision. Okay, well, what's the vision? Because I don't really see it published out there. And if it is, someone point me to it. Would love to look at it. But obviously, it definitely changes a little bit with new leadership now with Corey Wray. And one of the quotes I pulled from her bit on the 5-year vision was, I want to be talking about the fact that we won a cup and we have homegrown players playing all over the globe. These things aren't going to come overnight, right? We have an excellent start to our academy. We have a hotbed of talent here in St. Louis. We haven't yet had, in my opinion, the breakout of a local talent on the first team, right? We've had some close calls here and there, and some guys that I think we feel confident can make that jump. Looking at you, Joyner. But can you make that jump? Can you put St. Louis on the map again? Not just for guys like Sargent, not just for guys like Tim Ream. These guys are, pushing into their mid-20s, Tim Ream pushing closer to your 40s. But can we continually look to blood, first team players here in St. Louis and churn out top level local talent. And again, put ourselves on the map there. We're already doing a great job. Can you do that better? The cup part was interesting too, Justin. I was not expecting the cup part. And she didn't put a timeline on this. I know it's part of the 5-year vision, but it does sort of go against. Not that I ever said that we don't care about cups, but I think we care about a lot more than just cups. And she definitely said some things similar to that as well. But clearly, winning is something that is part of her vocabulary when she talks about this club.
And that's kind of where she ends this. Is like a culture shift, not only in the culture shift of the locker room, but of the organization, and saying, I want winning to be boring, the norm, not the exception. Now, I'll agree with it. I don't want it to be, I want it to not be the exception. I don't want winning to be boring. I want winning to be awesome. It's going to be a lot of fun, but I get where she's coming from on this and saying essentially she just wants it to be consistent, and consistent things just day in, day out. You get in, you win, you leave, you get in, you win, you leave. At some point, it does start to wear off on the excitement. And that is what she's looking for, is a mature and stable organization. And she's in her, along with Corey Wray and Johanna May, they have to do that by raising the standards internally. And I think that's what all three of them are focused on with Diego Gigliani and the rest of the ownership group. I do think that they are really realizing that, hey, we need to hit the reset button on this. It doesn't need to be an absolute blow it up, get everybody out of here, but we need to get everybody back together and say, what is this club about from the ground up? And that's the only way that we can move forward to be successful.
Yeah, because I think one of the most clear things that came through to me in this interview was reflection. And, a lot of people like to say they reflect and they can look in the mirror and look at who's staring back at them and make adjustments. But going on camera, saying what you have to say, and to this level of detail, I got to tell you, not many majority owners would probably be able to nor want to do that at that level of detail. You can tell. I know that she's a CEO as well, but just how involved she is. Like, we know for a fact that when we were interviewing Diego at the beginning of last year, of course, it was like one of those days where Carolyn wasn't there, but she is there every day in the office from what we heard from the staff around us, which I thought was really impressive. But setting a standard, right? Like a shift. What we had before, it's not going to happen anymore. This isn't going to fly. The culture needed to change. We obviously could all tell that. Both, I think you could make a case for on the field, in the locker room, but also in some of the ways that we work, right, as an organization. So I just, as painful as these last 2.5 years have been, these last 2 seasons, Justin, I do think we're probably better off for it. And that's with the big gaping assumption that we've learned from it. And now we're going to be in a better trajectory, which one can hope, right? But I do think that net, this is a good time to kind of look in the mirror and realize that this wasn't something that you had in 2023 that was sustainable. And you got maybe a little bit higher in your own supply for a bit. And you got brought back down to earth. You crashed down. And now you're back here. And like you said, build that foundation, build something sturdy that we can all believe in, and see at least kind of what's going on, and get behind and support. And this fan base, the culture around you here in St. Louis, they'll take you the rest of the way. We all care so much about it. But can you just put one foot right at a time, and just keep incrementally improving? And I think just from what I'm hearing, what we're hearing, Justin, here, I believe her. I don't think she's any reason to blow smoke up our ass and say this is, all going to be great and it's going to be amazing. But when I hear what she says, I believe her. And so far in the offseason, with some of the names we're seeing come through, yet to be more, we'll see here, Justin, I believe they're acting like it as well.
No, I do agree, Jake. And I think that there possibly will be more names when you talk about it. I feel like Corey Ray's done a little bit of play on words. Maybe she did. And then Roman Berkey going through that interview on the sidelines last week as well. So more to come on that. I will say there's another team just across the state that, yeah, they moved incrementally year over year. It took some time, maybe not so much on the field, but as an organization they did, and it paid off for them big time. Yes, I'm talking about Sporting Kansas City, and yes, this is a positive note for them. And the reason that we're about to talk about it is because it's a very positive note for the MLS. So, Jake, if anybody didn't already see this on any of our socials, I want to bring it for all of our listeners as well. Back in 2006, the Illig family bought controlling stake in Sporting Kansas City, which was then the Wizards, where the team was very young. The MLS was very young. There was no soccer-specific stadium, and the net worth or estimated value of the Wizards was $25 million. Now, why is this in the news today? Last Friday, the Illig family just agreed to sell 71% of the club for a total franchise value of $700 million. That means not just their 71%, the entire franchise was valued at $700 million, meaning that Sporting Kansas City went from $25 million to $700 million, which is 28 times of an increase just over 20 years. Now, that's like, oh, well, that seems incredible, right? But how does that really stack up to the juggernauts like the NFL? I'm glad you asked, Jake. The Kansas City Chiefs were worth $884 million back in 2006. And now, after winning 3 Super Bowls in that same time period, they're worth $6.2 billion. Wow, that's a lot of money, right? However, that's only a 7 times increase. That means Sporting Kansas City has outgrown the Chiefs fourfold in a 20-year span. And this is why they were doing this while fighting for the wooden spoon last season. The growth of soccer in the MLS in America has been tremendous over the last 20 years, and it is only going up from here.
Yeah, this was a cool story. And I think I don't want to talk positively about anyone out west, whether they're on the border of the state or whatever. But I'll say about the Illig family, buying this team, for 25 or being valued at 25 mil in 2006. Kansas City, the Wizards at the time, were, not where we, I think, historically think of them. They're one of, in my opinion, the better teams of the 2010 to 2019 decade. They had a couple of championships. I watched them win a U.S. Open Cup at home there at Children's Mercy Park out of Nebraska Furniture Mart. And what they put together as a club, I think you can definitely strive toward and strive to be. What they've done recently, not good, right? It's definitely, I feel like, time for a reset. And they got a guy that's got deep enough pockets. And I think Peter Mayuk, is that who that was? Justin, who was willing to fork over the money. He's a Kansas City, local. I think he lives out in Overland Park, and he was a minority owner before. Flexes now into the majority spot. Illig family stays on, though, as managing directors, and they'll represent the Board of Governors meeting too. So they're not going anywhere. But this guy, Justin, because I don't know if you saw this or heard this after, but he did go out, and everyone's going to say this as a new owner, but he did say he was going to open up the checkbook for investment that they have never seen before, starting this year, into next year. So, as a St. Louis fan, I want to hear your perspective first before I share some of mine, Justin. You can look neutral at it first, maybe, and then as a St. Louis fan, like, what do you feel about this whole move?
I actually really appreciate it, Jake, because regardless if you want to talk about the rivalry or not, one, if anything, it's just going to increase that rivalry. It's going to be tougher for us to beat them, but guess what? It's a rivalry game, regardless of who is favored in those games or whatnot. It all comes down to that game and who's going to play harder. You know how that is every year. But as a soccer fan in general, I think this is absolutely awesome. I love seeing someone spend that much money on a club that is literally was fighting for last place this season, saying, hey, I believe there's still a ton of upside here, and I'm willing to show it with my spending to become a majority owner. And then I'm going to do even further and bring more into this club, whether it be players, whether it be additions to the stadium and around the stadium to grow this in the Kansas City area. So I think for the Midwest and a small market team, because yes, regardless of what you want to think, like I know you think of like Miami being massive market, like anybody in the Midwest is a small market team. And I think it's awesome to see that is coming to the Midwest for us. And I think it shows a tremendous amount of growth, not only in the MLS, but in soccer in general.
Yeah, I like the narrative you started to go there, Justin, because every story needs the villain. You always got to be chasing someone or yourself, whatever. If it takes Kansas City to wake up a little bit, go under new ownership, splurge on the cash, even if it's incrementally, like it's not hard to outspend what they've already been spending, right? They're probably in the similar ballpark to us. They don't need to build a stadium anymore. Like all the infrastructure is there. They have state-of-the-art training facilities, not like we had when we got here. So now that that's all gone, focus on the team, focus on operations. How do you make this club better? I think they're going to turn a corner. Maybe not this year, but in the years coming down the line. And I think it's going to push us. So I think for me, I'm okay with it. Like, yes, it's going to make them a better team overall, in my opinion, but that should make us a better team overall. We're not going to want to lose to Kansas City every single year and every single time we play them. We're going to want to compete. And that might also be something that is a little bit of a fighting word or something that's in the back of our ownership's mind and our front office to say, hey, we're not going to get kicked around by this team. We have never wanted to do that. This is going to be a rival for ours for years, decades, whatever to come. We're not going to just accept that they're better than us. So we're going to have to compete with them. Like, I think the rising tide, Justin, in this case kind of lifts all boats. So, hey, also, by the way, an MLS team being worth close to $1 billion, Sporting Kansas City, by the way, being close to $1 billion, that is something else in entirety. It's a win for the league. These sales don't happen very often. So to now see this on paper for majority controlling share to be worth, $700+ million, that is some good ROI that you don't get many places.
No, and I was looking this up on Forbes. Like the top teams are worth like 1.2, 1.3. When you look at Miami, the LA Galaxy, the LAFC, and even Kansas City was, I think, estimated at 650 in August. So that it is higher than what Forbes even had them estimated as for $50 million, which is almost what that would be almost like a tenth of a percent or something like that. Or sorry, 10% higher than what they would have thought. So this is a huge, tremendous jump for the MLS, and I could not be more excited. And Jake, I'm also extremely excited for us to be partnered with DraftKings Sportsbook. DraftKings Sportsbook is an official betting sports partner of the NFL and has your back, actually, Jake, if you didn't know this, with early exit protection. Regardless if you're betting on Denver versus New England or LA versus Seattle this weekend, if the player in your eligible NFL player prop or parlay goes down at any point in the first half, you will get paid in cash. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, use code BWSTL. That's code BWSTL, and you can turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Connecticut, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino in Kansas, wager tax pass-through may apply in Illinois. 21 and over in most states. Void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer.
Booyah.
Justin, I was when we were doing that, I just looked up just out of curiosity. We talked about the parity in this league and the valuations and how shocked I think we both are at how much Sporting is worth, but how much that reflects on MLS and also how close all the valuations are in MLS. Because at the higher end, Justin, I think it's probably low billions for your biggest franchises here in this league, and then you have your Sportings, maybe your St. Louis's towards the bottom of that end, but like. It's not a lot. It's probably 400 million, of a gap at that. But that is not elsewhere. Like this parity doesn't happen in other places. Just for example, I pulled the Premier League, Justin. Burnley is the least valuation. They have the least amount of value as a total club in the Premier League this season. They are worth between 270 to almost $300 million. That's great, but you could buy 3 Burnleys for the price of Sporting Kansas City, which is nuts. Now, if we're ready to move on to this conversation, okay, Burnley, remember, let's just call it 280 million, right in the middle there. They're just worth 280 million. Manchester United is the most valuable team in the Premier League. They are worth $6 billion compared to the 280 million in Burnley. So when you talk about parity in this league and how great of a valuation and situation is for owners, because your investment is so much more locked in than it is in other soccer leagues around the world, just because a lot of it being the threat of promotion relegation. We're talking apples and oranges, right? When you go overseas into different leagues, it's mind-boggling how these teams play in the same league and can compete. Like Leicester, it makes the Leicester story even so much cooler from 2016, by the way. Going back to their 2016 trend, they were the champions in 2016. But yeah, the idea that Sporting Kansas City, I'm struggling to grapple with it, Justin, just because I have the recent Sporting on my mind. I don't have the Sporting of the 2010s decade when they did win some silverware and they were at the top of their game, especially for a mid-market team. It was impressive, but their parity, though, they're still so close in valuation to all these other bigger clubs that I think probably sell more jerseys, have a lot more global recognition, a lot more name brand. But it does tell you why you get some big celebrities and big athletes and big names that get invested in MLS, because it is a great investment.
Yes, Jake. I mean, one of the craziest stories still is whatever they gave the LA Galaxy gave Beckham, or the MLS gave Beckham when he signed with the LA Galaxy, and he was then able to start an MLS franchise for what I believe to be $25 million, if I'm not wrong. And that was that was like 3 or 4 years ago, when the average price to start a new franchise was like $300 million. So it's talking about buying low and selling high. this guy is making hand over foot right now, because that thing is, his $25 million investment is now worth like $1.3 billion. And it's only going to continue to go like this, not only because the MLS is on the rise, but soccer's on the rise. So for anybody that hasn't heard it, I'm going to keep saying it pretty much every episode, because the World Cup is coming. The U.S. is playing here on June 12th, and that is a Friday night. It's going to be absolutely electric. And then you're going to have all these other countries coming to the U.S. as well. And the MLS actually decided to dip a couple games in right before the final. So it's like, hey, if you're in the States, you want to get a little soccer on your mind while you're waiting for the final to kick off, we've got some matchups for you.
We do. Yeah. It's gonna be a really, really fun year for soccer, man. I'm so excited, and I'm glad this club is kind of also keeping up with some of the excitement. And Justin, I would not be surprised, given we're recording this a little bit earlier than we normally do this week, if by this time next week we could have some additional news to talk about, whether that's a finalization of the Mbacke Fall deal, or maybe someone new that we haven't yet heard about or haven't been linked to yet. I think there's some good times coming in terms of this offseason news for us. And obviously preseason, we have already kicked off preseason. So we'll have a game under our belt. As meaningless as it is, I'm sure we will speculate a lot on.
Absolutely. I mean, what else can we do right now? Because I'm just so excited to see this team play again. So, Jake, real quick, I want to round us out with some listener questions. I had at least a couple on Instagram and a couple that I wanted to share more specifically. This first one is from Fordamale. He asked, do you think that Fall will be a key to a championship, or do we need more firepower? I'll answer that one on my own, and then I'll kick the next one to you. But the answer is no. He will not be the key to the championship. We need to be signing a DP for that, and likely now someone up top. If you're going to be starting Daniel Edelman at the 6, it feels like that kind of holds that role. But I do think that he's going to be an exciting center back pairing, as we started at the beginning of the show. Jake, this is a more interesting one. It's still a hot topic for City fans. We had a couple of people be asking about this, but I'm going to call this one out. Mason Hoffman said, do you think we will sign Henry Kessler? So what are you hearing, and what's going on there, Jake?
Yeah. I mean, from some of the people that we know in and around the situation, it doesn't sound like he'll be coming back to City. It looks like he's looking for a landing spot in Europe. There is some interest, but due to just his injury history, just given how plagued he's been these last couple of seasons especially, I think there's probably some early on hesitance there, because he's also commanding a decent salary. He was not being paid cheap here. Like we were definitely paying him a good amount of money. I'm sure he'll want that when he goes for his next move. But can he stay healthy? I think that's what causes a little bit of hesitancy, probably on our side, as well as any other suitors overseas. So how do you fill the void? Do you sign new draftee Zach Lillington to a deal? He's a big boy, 6'4", but obviously not proven at this level yet. Obviously we're looking at Mbacke Fall as well. I also just think Justin, and we also have Lucas McNaughton on trial. The thing with Kess is, he to me, if you are, a team in the window right now, you're in your winning window, you're going to be really competitive next year, and you have the cap for it, I think you might take a flyer on Henry Kessler. He could come out, stay healthy the whole season, and be a Defender of the Year candidate. Like, I legitimately believe he could be, if he could stay healthy. But that's the key part. Can he stay healthy? And do you have the money to let him sit on the shelf if he's not healthy all season? Because I don't think we do, nor are we in a situation where we're in a window right now. So I think we're opting for a little bit more low risk, but also a little bit more type of profile where we're not buying these guys that are ready to come in and just knock it out of the park. They're going to need to come here, get minutes, earn those minutes, earn trust, and build on their game while here. Whereas I don't think Henry Kessler's in that point of his career anymore. He's looking for that last big contract to see if he can stick with it, make it somewhere big, and show his talent. I don't believe that St. Louis is the right fit for him anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, Jake, I still would love to have him on the squad.
Yeah.
We have a lot of pieces that could be playing center back. When you look at our depth now, when we're talking about Falou Fall, if we go with Mamadou Fall, then we also talk about Timo Baumgartel. Then you add in Kyle Hebert, Josh Yarrow. So there's 5 right there. But I would love to have King Kess be the one that is manning and owning that center back position, because I still get a little nervous when you talk about both Falls, right? Could be very exciting, but very young, could make some young mistakes. And Timo Baumgartel will be a great starter for this team, but I do think that Henry Kessler is an upgrade there. But like you said, the club is kind of not, I'm not saying moving on without him, but we are moving on and preparing for him not to come back. When you talk about our 7th overall pick, Zach Lillington that you mentioned, both Falls, Lucas McNaughton as a trialist, those are guys that have not even been signed to the team for sure yet, and we're possibly bringing them in to look at this. So Would I love to have King Cass back? Yes. Will the team fall apart without him? No, we'll be just fine. But Jake, there's another one in here. A question from Wray. Who is a big name player that we could realistically bring in that you think that we should go for? And honestly, it's a great question, Wray, but it's also very open right now. And maybe, Jake, I might even reframe that for what piece do you think this team is missing now? If we're going, it sounds like Daniel Edelman might be the 6th that we just signed him for a 3-year deal. He'll probably be right next to Leuven. And it sounds like Wallem will fill that left back spot. So you have right back with Totland. We have a plethora of center backs. Now you're moving your way up the field. What kind of player are you looking for?
Yeah, so if we're talking like the sexy signing, like we're not talking about like, oh, we need cover for the fullbacks, right? Like we don't want to go there. So I think now that you've got, the 6 at least partially sorted with Edelman, you've got center back, let's assume Mbacke is coming for sure. I think for me, the next avenue, and this is not because I don't think he's good enough, because I do think he is good enough, but right now he's not our player post next year, is striker. I think you go for a striker who is a striker, like your center forward, or you pursue someone that can kind of fill a second striker type role, like what Gio Aquini sort of did for us, but at a much higher level and a much higher pay grade, of course, with the DP level. You go for someone that can flex into the wing, can do 1v1 with players, that can kind of be your game breaker at moments, games where you just might not have your best stuff. Kick it to this guy, he can do it. He can do it on his own some nights. It's like that type of player for us. Again, I don't know how the names yet, because again, it's still such a big swing, but someone that brings that sort of wow factor, that can do things on their own. It's not to replace Klaus. Maybe they play with Klaus. Maybe they replace Klaus after next season if he's gone. But how do you augment your attack to give Hartel more pieces in his arsenal to share the load with?
Yeah, I think kind of what you're getting at there, Jake, and correct me if I'm wrong, is just a true finisher. And I would love to have a finisher next to Klaus to be able to take a lot of that. I don't want to say responsibility, because he can man that, having a 10-goal season last year, but it takes a lot of the eyes off of him, because he is an incredible hold-up player. He already creates space with the with the runs that he is making. So to your point, if you have someone that can truly finish and he can set them up, I could see Klaus having a 7-8 assist season, while also still netting 6 goals if you get a true finisher. And yes, we have a ton of these guys that are kind of rotating in this piece, but they've had their opportunities and really haven't been like, I'm going to own this position. We talked about that on the wings. You've got your Simon Betcher, you've got your Sangbin, you've got your Celio. A lot of these guys that can come in and fly around and play very well, but no one says, yep, I am that starting guy right now, and we need a finisher to be able to do that, because I don't want to go another season where we have like 5 goals for like 3 or 4 guys. I would love to have a guy have 15, 16 goals, and maybe Klaus can do that for us this year, but I think there's even a better chance if you have another finisher next to him that one of them will get up into the teens.
Yeah, and I'll give Mike a shout out. Mike's in it at Chat City Tactics, did a great Substack piece. You can find that on Twitter. You can find that, wherever he is, where he looked at some possible additions and some of the positions that he would look in. And I think when you're looking at this team, we were really lacking like a star power, right, up top. You have Hartel, who is exceptional. You have Leuven even, who can contribute as well, but you just don't know sometimes with his personal situation. Sangbin, I don't think is exceptional, right? Like, I think he's a great addition to the team. U22, he makes a lot of sense, brings us a lot of that verticality. And Klaus, we know what he is. He's a great commodity on this team. He's a known. He is your Olivier Giroud of France. I don't think he's here to bang down the table and win, the Golden Boot. But I think he brings out the best a lot of the guys around him. But I think for us, like we just talked about, I think it is someone with some serious power up front that is totally different, like not your big target man like Klaus. I think someone maybe on the shorter end who's a lot more shifty, again, a great dribbler of the ball, got great final product, like you mentioned, Justin, someone that we wouldn't worry about if the ball fell to him in the 18. This guy's whacking it on net and sticking it in the back, and he's helping us on our way to collecting 3 points, like someone with ice in their veins. And there's those guys out there. You know what I mean? That there are those guys out there that I think we could look at it pursuing. And I think it could be in the striker. It could be on a wing. If you're looking at a wing, probably the left wing, if I'm imagining correctly. But I just think we're a difference maker away from taking another leap with this team. And I mean a leap. I'm not saying championship or bust, right? I think this is a leap. We are now putting our faith, our money in someone that can elevate us, but maybe not to the promised land yet.
No, I think that's a great point, Jake. And I think, and I want to give a huge shout out. We're having a ton of questions and comments coming in here. So we're trying to field them and add a couple in here right at the end. I have over 100 of you in here, which I think is absolutely awesome. So another one here from Landon Crete, Jake. He says, what would be your starting 11 with what we have right now? And so, Jake, what I can actually do for us just real quick to give people a sense of what that could possibly look like, we can look at the one that was our last game of the season this past year, what we predicted with RSL. And so with that, you have Mbacke in the back, Wallem at left back, Fall at center back, Baumgartel at center back, Totland at the right. I think that could very well be our, obviously, goalkeeper in back four. Moving forward, we have Leuven Durkin, which I don't want to say that Daniel Edelman is the automatic starter, because I think Durkin is showing from what we're hearing in preseason, coming in fit, coming in with a different mindset and excited and ready to be back. So he's going to be competing for that as well. And then you move forward, you have Celio, Hartel, Sengbin, and Klaus. Honestly, Jake, I would not be surprised whatsoever if this is our starting 11 going back into this season.
And if you think, or if we see that Demay wants to do with back five, back three, I could see Fall, Baumgartel, and Mbacke Fall from left to right there. And then you would see Wallem go to left wing back, Totland to right wing back. So there's your back three, back five. Then in front of them, I would probably see two, right? We're talking about like a five. I don't even know how these formations work anymore. It's been so long. But I basically would play your back five, and then I would have either I could see Edelman getting a good shake at this too over Durkin even to start. But I think you have your two sitting in front of the five that help kind of cover for those wing backs. I could see your ahead of them. So I'm seeing Leuven and one of Edelman or Durkin. And then I'm seeing probably your wide tens being Hartel, right? And that's not great because you want to see him play more centrally, but maybe he is pushed out a little bit more to the left like we saw when he initially arrived here. Then maybe someone that brings you more of that verticality, like a Sengbin on the right of him, followed by Klaus up at the top. I think that's probably what I would lean toward. It's a lot closer to what you're showing here, Justin. So here, instead of Horn, Nilsson, Kessler, it would be, like I said, Fall being our current Fall, Falu Fall, then in Baumgartel, then Mbacke Fall, then Wallem ahead of them, anchored by Leuven. And I'm going to go ahead and say Edelman right now next to Leuven, Totland to the right, and then Hartel either offset with him and Sengbin, or him in front of that midfield with two up top where you could go, look like a Klaus Betcher. It could be really interesting. I'm open to a lot of things, but I think right now we're mentioning a lot of the same names with like us being hung up on Edelman Durkin, which a lot of it should come out in preseason. Or if you want to really, it also then comes down to where you're going to play Hartel. Do you want to play him only centrally, or are you okay with letting him float more to the left and having another, wide or more vertical player that does a lot more of the stretching of the game compared to him more, keeping one to say more centrally and invert?
Yeah, I would say, Jake, I think that for anybody that can't see this visually, I think this would be it, obviously, with the replacement of names. But from a lineup perspective of going three center backs, and then you'd almost have four in front of them, where Wallem and Totland would be in that four, but then they would drop back if it gets defensively, but they'd be up in the four offensively. And then I would leave Hartel centrally by himself, because I think if you try to slide him to the right and move Sengbin to his left, it takes away from the attacking presence of Wallem and Totland getting that width from the center back, or from the fullbacks getting up and back. So I would go with a 3-4-1-2. But right now, I still think that it should be a 4-2-3-1. I just don't think that these center backs are screaming to me that we should be playing three of them in the back at this point. I think we have a plethora of them, but it doesn't mean that we need to shove as many of them onto the field as we can.
Yeah, and I think with the way Demay is coming in and what he said so far, I'm not going to be as fixated on the formation and like what the team card says when it comes out and where, FOTMob places them in their graphic. I think it'll be more about, with what at least Demay has said, a lot more situational awareness and positional flexibility where, like, yes, we might play a 4-2-3-1, but that might look like a back three a lot of the time. That might look like a back five sometimes. That might look like a back two sometimes when we're up the field in possession. Like, there'd be a lot of shifting and a lot of really important lessons drilled in preseason around your position is your position, but it's not cement. You are allowed to roam, to be free, to go find the ball in positions, especially if your name is Leuven or your name is Wallem sometimes. Like certain guys will be given reins to go do more than what they might have traditionally been able to do. So I think at this point, just from what I've heard about Deme and then what we've known about Nance and how he kind of mentored Deme coming up through the ranks, Columbus did it well. Those guys played positions, but it wasn't the only thing they did. They were given a lot of freedom to roam and given some liberties, but with liberty comes responsibility. So like there are going to be some learning lessons for sure that we see along the way of vacated space and blown coverage and whatnot. But I am looking forward to a little bit more like malleability in our team and being able to kind of flex up and down sometimes depending on game state.
Yeah, it seems like we're going to have a little bit of a deeper team this year, right? I think that we had that last year, but then we had a lot of injuries. And again, knock on wood, you're going to have that in some seasons. But I think we're going to be able to have a lot of different formations and molds, kind of like the SLU basketball team, Jake, just to kind of make another cross-sport reference for you. But, Jake, we're just over an hour, but I want to send us out on a good note as well. Something that can't go unnoticed is a comment from Wray here saying, good to see Leuven out there having joy again. It gives me the chills. That guy has had a rough go of it off the field, and I am so happy to see him back with this team. I'm wishing him and his family the best because city soccer is not the same without him. On the field, off the field, it's so much fun to watch him and see what he can do on the field. So I'm extremely excited for him to be back and this team to be back. Now they're down in preseason in Bradenton, Florida.
Yeah, people kind of forget, we haven't really seen Leuven at Leuven's peak these last couple seasons just because of what's been going on with his family, and he's taken the right time to prioritize that and put his heart and his head there, which is where it belongs. I don't know what's going on there. He looks happy in these photos, and I'm so happy that he looks happy even, and I hope that everything is going as well as it can be in those circumstances. But if we could get anything close to good availability from him, continuous amount of run of games, some good form, him playing consistently for months, not just days or weeks, but for months. I don't think we've seen that in a long time. And I don't think this league has seen that, nor are they ready for it. So, I mean, dark horse, man, I know that it's not like it's shocking to say, but I still think we have a lot more to see from Edu Leuven if we are given the opportunity to do so this year.
Absolutely. I think this is a guy that we talked about it, like player of the season in the first season. As far as field players, I think Mbacke stood on his head. Obviously, I think he was a goalkeeper of the year. But from a guy like that, I think people really, we kind of just don't talk about it enough. We're talking about all these pieces that are moving back and forth. That was a gaping hole for this team last season, not only on the field, off the field, from a leadership perspective as well, locker room, everything. So to your point, if we can have him consistently on the field and with this squad, this team is much better off, and I'm very much looking forward to that.
I too. What a good way to end the show there, Justin, on some positivity and round us out. It was a fun one. A lot of fun news going on, honestly, around the club right now, and we're here to break it all down for you. And if you don't catch us on the podcast sometimes, or we don't record until next week, make sure you follow us on all social media. Obviously, we're on YouTube here if you're watching us. Make sure you like and subscribe, like the video, show us some love, drop us a comment, leave us some hot takes of your own retweets or deletes. That'll be fun. And make sure you follow us on X, on Instagram, now on TikTok as well. Putting out some of our fun content there, but we're never too far away. You all know that from social media. We try to stay active out there, but engage with us. Shoot us DM, shoot us thoughts. We want to work in more fan perspective throughout the season this season because we've got a loud fan base. It'd be a shame if we didn't include some of those voices here.
We're seeing some of the comments in the DM, so promise you we are getting to them. We are responding. We are pushing them out on here as well. And if anybody is really good at TikTok, give your man a call. This is very new to me. I feel old with the glasses and all of this, but we're trying our best out there. Essentially right now it's just reposting reels, but I'm going to have Danny working on this, and we're going to be up to full speed here in a couple days.
I love it. Well, thank you all for tuning in. Had a great turnout tonight on the show. We'll be back next week with hopefully some more news to break down, some more analysis and thought to come from Jake and Justin here on Ball Watching. But until then, all for City.
All for City.